again with Perfect Tattoo History, and it's been a good trip. We're at the Imperial Tattoo Convention this weekend after a long road trip, and I'm sitting here with probably one of tattooing's biggest heroes from the 90s and 80s and 2000s and 2000. And Ken was really well known for his flash at one point. And I think just about everybody bootlegged his flash, correct?
Pretty much,
right.
Yeah. Heavily
So
bootlegged.
Ken's been a mainstay in tattooing for a long time. We'll get his history in a second, but like this is one of those guys that I definitely looked up to when I was first tattooing, and he's one of the guys that were around. He was one of the guys that you want to do work like he did. So Ken's in Miami now, and let's get a little bit about what do you what got you started in tattooing? Usually it's getting tattoos.
Well, it's a funny story. I had a cousin that grew up 2 blocks from the Pike in Long Beach, and I grew up farther north in the Bay Area of California, and my cousin Larry came to visit us when I was 10 years old, and he had tattoos in all the normal spots on like his forearms and biceps and stuff. Super traditional, iconic tattoo imagery, tattoos that look like tattoos that he got done on the Pike when he was really young, like 13 years old. He came, and it was really the first tattoos that I had seen, other than on my dad's best friend, who was a Marine Corps veteran that had, devil dogs and stuff like that. So we were instantly transfixed by seeing these tattoos, and my cousin showed us how to wrap thread around a needle and dip it in India ink and do hand poke tattoos. So me and my brother Steve immediately started tattooing ourselves and each other and my other brother and our friends from the neighborhood with hand poke tattoos. Got in so much trouble. Steve was 9, I was 10.
So who was it? You always have the ringleader, and then there's the one all the mothers blame the one kid,
Of course, we were the ones that got everybody else in trouble for sure. And it was funny, the first one that Steve did, he wasn't sure what to do, so he put a question mark on his leg upside down so that he could see it, and he pounded that thing in there. It was solid black, really thick. And as soon as it was done, he came down to show it off to my parents. Hey, look what I got. And they lost their minds. My dad gave them a Brillo pad and said, go in the bathroom and don't come out until that thing is gone. And he tried to scrub it off. His leg was bleeding and obviously it never came off. And that was the beginning of our tattoo.
Well, you know what? That's the funny thing. You know how many times I've heard that fucking story?
Oh, really?
Like from customers or other, older tattooers and shit. Like they made them scrub it off, or they got a wire brush and started scrubbing it off the kid's arm. So that's your first introduction to tattooing, and so you obviously you got tattooed before. You started tattooing. So where does the love for tattooing come into where you feel like you want to do this for a living?
Well, it's weird. Steve was my younger brother, and he got so into the whole thing with tattooing that we were building homemade tattoo machines a couple years later, using like an electric train transformer as a power supply and little electric razors, with
so
a
you guys
needle
were taking
attached,
shit apart and putting it back together.
Making tattoo machines, and Steve eventually built his own little foundry and invented a type of tattoo machine, and he opened his first tattoo shop. An actual real tattoo shop when he was 15 years old.
Holy shit.
And it sort of went from there, and then we had a love for the art, and we didn't have like a history of knowing or anything like that. When I was 14, on my 14th birthday, I went to the actual professional tattoo shop in San Jose where we grew up, and I went in there and got a tattoo on my birthday.
Awesome.
And I liked it so much that the next day I grabbed my friend Rocky and went down there, and I got another tattoo, and I bought him a tattoo.
No way.
And so I got tattooed twice within 2 days of my 14th birthday, and it was all downhill from there. You know?
Right on, right on. So you get older, I'm sure you got some more tattoos. And where are you breaking in at? I mean, how are you getting started in tattooing?
Well, so my brother had opened a shop. His first shop was in Redding, California, and he had that shop for maybe a year and a half. Then he moved back to San Jose and opened a shop on West San Carlos Street in San Jose. A regular shop. He's like a 16-year-old kid at this point, and I went in the military, and when I got out, I had been doing artwork my whole life, and Steve started asking me to draw custom tattoos for his customers.
That's great.
And I started doing that on a pretty regular basis, and then people started asking me to do the tattoos, and he'd been trying to get me to come in and start tattooing
Sure.
with them for a while, and eventually I just started working at his shop with him, and it just sort of went from there. It just seemed like a natural thing. It didn't seem, you know, I mean, it wasn't like going to a stranger and trying to get an apprenticeship.
I mean, you're tattooing with your brother.
Yeah,
know?
so it's just like
That's,
me and my
that's
brother
pretty cool,
doing
man.
our thing.
I think that's one of the first stories I've heard like this, you know.
You know, it's funny, I used to talk to Mike Malone all the time, and I love talking to Mike because he was one of the best storytellers in tattooing.
Oh, most definitely.
Had so many great stories, and when he asked me the same question about how I got started, and I told him this story about me and Steve tattooing ourselves when we were 9, he said, that is the best story I've ever heard in my life.
It's a great story.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome story.
So how long did you spend with your brother there?
I just worked with my brother maybe for like about a year, and then I left and went and opened my own shop. I left the town where I grew up at. For some reason, I had heard that if you want to be a tattooer, you have to have like a fake name. You don't want to use your own name.
Yeah, for sure. You need
all
a
that
little
kind
moniker, yeah.
Because and I wanted to go somewhere else, and sort of I didn't want to tattoo all my friends before I really was good at what I was doing and stuff. And I thought the best thing to do is to go out of town and learn how to do it there. And
so where was that at?
well, I ended up going to Vancouver Island, and went up there. And it's funny because one of the first things that happened when I went up there was I met Dave Shore.
Lucky you.
Yeah, Dave Shore, he had been tattooing with Ed Hardy and Mike Malone and Zeke at Sailor Jerry's shop in Honolulu. They were like a really tight little group of guys, and Dave immediately took me under his wing and started showing me lots of stuff that I never learned from my brother. And
like he was one of those guys. I remember seeing his stuff and just being blown away. You know, like,
he was like,
it was like whatever he did, you know, Celtic or black and gray, whatever.
He was
such a good artist,
such an amazing artist. He was a sign painter before he started tattooing, so he had that really super clean graphic.
Yeah, well, he did all those
style.
Susie Saloon signs and stuff in Amsterdam and stuff for Hank, and and that guy could paint and draw his ass off for sure.
Yeah, he taught me so much, and I mean, it was just the biggest lucky break that some young kid could get in his life.
For real. So how long did that last then? How long were you guys hanging out together?
Well, he lived in Vancouver. Oh, and the funny thing about that is Ed Hardy, when he wanted to start learning how to tattoo and really break in, he left California and he went to Vancouver and worked with Dave Shore using a fake name. He called himself Ed Talbot. And,
sure.
He did a bunch of flash that was signed Ed Talbot and stuff like that. So I guess, the fact that I wanted to leave town and get my start somewhere else, it wasn't like a unique idea or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to fuck up everyone in the area you live in, and you got to look at that shit,
Right, exactly.
I kind of made the mistake of doing that, but I got real lucky and got to cover all the bullshit up, most of it anyway, so. But, so you were with Dave for a while, and then you move on to where?
Okay, so when I left there, I moved back to California. I had been hit by a car when I lived up there. I got in a really bad accident, broke my leg really bad, was in the hospital for a long time. And after that, I moved back to California to try to rehab myself and learn how to walk right again and all that. And I did some tattooing while I was doing that in California, and I kind of was over living, you know, in the area where I grew up.
Right.
So I left, and I was going to do a road trip. My goal was to go to Miami. I had never been to Florida before or anything. And I made it as far as I was going to tattoo, like do guest spots on my way out there. Stopped in Phoenix, got a job with Peter Polos, working at one of his shops there. Spent 3 months working with him, and then a national tattoo convention came to Phoenix there in 1983. I met Cliff Raven. My brother had already been working for Cliff at the shop on Sunset Strip.
Nice.
And so Cliff knew about me, and I had been sending him photos of my work for a couple years before that, and he asked me to come to work at Sunset Strip. So I was like, wow, can you imagine? Again, I get the break of a lifetime in tattooing.
You're stepping in shit wherever you go.
Oh my God.
What the fuck, dude?
I get to go work for Cliff Raven. I mean, he was like one of the best tattooers in the world at that time.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I jumped at that opportunity, went there, worked in his shop for 2 years, and actually I did the day shift from noon until 6 at his private studio, working on like big back pieces and bodysuits and stuff like that he had started, and then left there and went to the Sunset Strip shop and worked from 6 until midnight there every day. So I was doing 12 hours of tattooing in two shops.
And you know what? And when you're so into it, like it doesn't feel like, man, I gotta work another shift. You're like, yeah, I get to work another shift.
Couldn't wait to go to another shift.
Like we would get in there about like 9:30, 10 in the morning, make a bunch of needles and shit, get all our shit set for the day, and then open up around 11, 11:30, sometimes 12, whatever, you know. And we'd be there to fucking, you know, midnight was the earliest, and then like 3, 4, 5 in the morning wouldn't be unusual. Right. You know what I mean? And it didn't feel like it was working. We're like, oh man, I need a day off. It was like, man, you couldn't fucking wait for the next day to get there, you know?
Yeah. I couldn't wait to get to work, and always felt so fortunate.
It's always cool tattoos, and we were making tons of money.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, you were living a dream.
Exactly. It was. You couldn't wait to get to work again.
Fuck, it was great. And I was just like, sometimes it's like, oh man.
Well, not
some days
not
are better
so
than
much.
others.
I'm not tired of tattooing.
I'm not tired of tattooing, but it's, you know, the certain shit that comes in now as opposed to what used to come in and what you used to be able to do. So.
Well, Dave Shore told me right at the beginning, he goes, are you burnt out on this stuff yet? And I was like, hell no, I can't wait to get to work every day. And he goes, well, give it about 10 or 15 years and you're going to be so burnt out on it, you're going to hate it. And I was like, I don't think that's going to happen.
I heard the same thing. And I did get a little bit burnt.
I never got burnt out on it.
I did, well, you know, you try to do too much. You know what I mean? And that's what it was. You know, you try to please everybody. So then everything, you know, kind of, now it's, you know, life's more balanced. You know, you get mature and then you learn how to kind of situate your time.
You have other things that you do and stuff like that to keep learning new things.
Exactly. So when you guys were hanging out with Paul Jeffries and Henning and all these, when did you guys come to meet all these cats?
Okay, so it's a weird story. Paul grew up in Vancouver also, and Paul and I had both heard about each other's tattooing when I was living on Vancouver Island, but we had never met. And it's funny because Paul and I have a really similar life. Before I became a tattooer, I used to own a custom paint shop, and I used to paint custom cars, lowriders, hot rods, motorcycles, things like that. Airbrushing and that in the 70s when that stuff was popular. Well, Paul did the same thing. He went to like vocational school and became a car painter also.
Really?
Before he started tattooing. And he had like a little art background also, always did drawings and stuff like that. And we both started tattooing about the same time. And then when I left Sunset Strip Tattoo, I moved to Dallas for a few years. And 1 year while I was in Dallas, I rode to Sturgis on my motorcycle, did some tattooing while I was up there, and met Paul Jeffries there at Sturgis, and he was like, "Hey man, you should come and do a guest spot with me sometime."
Stepping in
All
shit
right,
again.
so there we go.
Yeah, stepping in shit.
Another one
God
of the
damn,
best
dude.
tattooers in the world, and I get this other opportunity.
Yeah.
So I immediately went back to Dallas, packed a suitcase, went to Calgary, and worked for a month with Paul. And then at the end of the month, he goes, "Man, you got to come back and work like for 3 months or something." And I was like, "Man, I am so on that."
Yeah.
So I went and found somebody to take care of my dog and my house and stuff. Went back to Calgary, and while I was there, he goes, "Man, do you want a permanent job?" And I was like, "Hell yes."
Fuck yeah, you do.
So I went and grabbed all my stuff and moved to Calgary and lived there for 5 years and worked with Paul every day. I mean, it was one of the most awesome things in my
you had to
life.
learn so much there, man.
Oh man, so much.
You know, because like he always had to. Then this is just from secondhand information, like Bish, and like he wouldn't let anyone use anything less than a 3 there because he knew what the lines would look like, and but he was doing a lot of intricate stuff too.
He had a really good philosophy about tattooing. First of all, you want to be able to look at it from across the street and tell what it was.
Absolutely.
And then as you get closer, little things start showing up. You start seeing more and more and more in the design to where you can look at little, he would call it the little noodly stuff, like the designs on a kimono or something like that, and it's a really, in order to do that, you have to use multiple different kinds of line weights in your tattoos, like some heavy bold lines for the main subjects, and then the little really fine,
you could see
almost
that in
grayish
his,
lines.
you could see that in his flash. You know what I mean? His flash had it exactly what he did with his tattoos, and like the guys that like were trying to do nicer tattoos, man, that was a really good guideline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like the balance or whatever the ratio of how much black, how much color, and how much skin you have showing in a tattoo.
For sure.
All of that stuff. That's one of those things that's sort of lost in tattooing now.
Like all these, all the cats back then, they always had that. They had a really traditional foundation. They knew how it worked. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you needed that outline. You needed to put black in certain places to where, like, when the color's gone, then you're left with that.
Yeah,
and
you still have something that you can tell what it is.
Exactly. So it just seems like everyone, when I would talk to guys, they would tell you the same exact thing. You never heard anything different, The only things you would hear were from the assholes that were trying to do like color portrait bullshit. And that was already proven to be a failure, So yeah, looking at that stuff, I mean, that always drove, that philosophy in your head,
Yeah, it's the tried and true thing. I mean, it's kind of like you can break the rules, but you have to know the rules first in order to know how to break them right and which ones can actually be broken or whatever.
Yeah, you'd have guys drawing like monster bumblebees and shit. And they didn't even know how to draw like a real thing, or birds like looking all ridiculous, and they didn't know how to draw a real bird.
Right.
And there's reference out there, like our reference libraries were so huge, I don't mind it still,
Mine's
thousands of books,
huge,
And now I was just downstairs like, hey man, you can have your whole library on your phone. I was like, it's great and everything, but like I like the
actual book.
Yeah, I like the actual book. I can see everything that's going on. I can, you know what I'm talking about, but
yeah, books are going to be one of these rare artifacts that in the future they're going to go, wow, what is that?
Yeah.
We need to get some of these, or it's going to be a big collector thing just to have a book.
Oh, for sure. Like a lot of, the old reference books that you can't get anymore are worth like shitloads of money, you know? So you're in you get done with, almost so you get done with him and throw him away, but you're done working at Paul's place, and then where do you move on after that?
Okay, so I didn't ever really intend to spend 5 years in Calgary. I mean, it's insanely cold up there. It's like 30 below zero for 6 months of the year, and I don't like the cold. And I eventually, it was like, I've been here, I've done this, I want to go back to the United States. And so I actually did some research. I'm a weird nerd about stuff, and I wrote a bunch of letters back in those days before the internet to different cities to get information about the demographics, and I sort of decided I was going to move to Corpus Christi, Texas. And I packed up all my stuff in Calgary and started heading south.
What was in Corpus Christi?
Well, I just thought there wasn't very many tattoo shops. The weather was really nice. That was one of my big things. I wanted to be someplace hot after living in Calgary for 5 years. And they had, it was like 80-degree median temperatures or something. And they had a pretty good economy. The cost of living there was inexpensive. And I could buy a house and a building to put a tattoo shop. It was affordable for me. Sure. And so I actually started heading there, and I was driving in a blizzard, and it started getting worse and worse and worse, and eventually I was like trying to turn to avoid the blizzard, and I ended up back in California and just ended up...
Some just pushed you right there.
Yeah, I didn't really want to go there, but I ended up going to Sacramento, and I opened a shop there. I opened California Tattoo.
Yeah.
And was there for a couple of years, and then I ended up meeting Michelle, met her at a convention in New Jersey, and
was that the that would have been the Cherry Hill one?
The Meadowlands one.
Oh, that one, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we started dating. It was like a long distance thing, flying back and forth between Miami and California. And after 2 years of doing that, like every 2 weeks, one of us was flying across the country. And it was like, man, something has to change. This is really taking a toll on
for sure. A long distance romance
being gone
Yeah.
every 2 weeks from my just closing the shop, and
Sure.
it wasn't good for business. So I ended up deciding to. She didn't want to live in California, so I ended up selling my shop to Eddie Deutsch, and who is a really good friend of mine, and moving to Miami, and I've been there now for like 25 years.
Yeah. That's pretty much when I first met you, about 25 years ago. Yeah. Wow. And now, what's your schedule like now? Like you've been through the ringer and back, man. And I've watched you go through like the most heavy fucking shit and just come out on top. So what do you do now after going through all this fucking shit, the trials and tribulations of life, doing as much as you can in tattooing? Tattooing all these years, still loving tattooing, raising kids, being married, running businesses. It's a lot of shit, man.
Well, I don't know how this got instilled in me. It must have happened sometime as a kid, but I learned, basic principles of life from back in those days. I was born in the 1950s, so things like anything worth having is worth working for, and those types of principles of life. And I always wanted to put as much effort into everything that I could and try to be the best that I could be at whatever I was doing, which I totally put into tattooing. Tried to learn as much as I could about it, and try to do the best that I could at all times. And I've done that with other things in my life too. So when I moved to Miami, I started scuba diving, and I got really into that, and wanted to learn as much as I could about that, and started doing technical diving. Then I started doing cave diving.
I saw that shit, man. I mean, from looking far away, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I'm like, I'll never fucking do it, but
yeah, it's not,
God bless you.
Definitely not for everybody.
Sure.
It can be really claustrophobic, and there's all these primal human fears, like fear of the dark, fear of the unknown, fear of drowning, fear of being in an enclosed place. All those weird things happen with that.
Doing all that underwater, that's fucking scary.
Yeah, I loved it though. It was like a challenge, like challenging yourself to see.
I've done that in other ways, but when it comes to drowning and shit, it's not my cup of tea. But yeah. I like living vicariously through others sometimes. You've been one of those guys. I see all the shit that you guys do. Down in Florida.
Well, you do tons of stuff too. I mean, you're a musician, and you're an incredibly prolific artist and all this stuff. So
well, thank you.
You're just doing things in a slightly different avenue than
yeah, for sure. Everybody's got their little niche in life,
So then I, like about 14 years ago, I started doing jiu-jitsu, and have the same attitude about that. I wanted to try to be the best that I could be.
You're like the champ, dude.
Yeah, I made it became a black belt, and became a world champion black belt. And
Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Oh my God.
Which is kind of cool because I didn't even start doing it until I was 50 years old, and that's the kind of time when people aren't really doing physical things.
No, they're not. Because I'm wrecked right now, and I'm over 50. You know what I mean? So I don't know how you do it, man.
Our lifestyles definitely have taken a toll on our health.
For sure. You know, like there's a certain amount that you give to get this.
Yeah.
Like to really get it though.
Yeah.
And in order to get it, man, you really gotta fucking work your ass off. You know what I mean?
And in tattooing, people don't understand, but if you're gonna be a lifelong career tattooist, you're gonna have back problems and you're gonna have hand problems, and you're gonna maybe.
Then you're gonna have girl problems.
Yeah,
then
well, all of those kind of, yeah, for sure. But I mean, just the leaning over and having to be in weird positions to tattoo strange places on people, and especially if you do big work and you're doing those kinds of positions for hours at a time, and just the holding of the tattoo machine and all the vibrating and stuff, it ruins all the tendons in your hand, and yeah, it's like you become a physical wreck.
But you know what's I always found crazy, like, and I've gone through a lot of fucking pain and tattooed through it, and when I sit down and tattoo and I'm focused on that tattoo, all the pain, all the bullshit, it's gone.
Yeah, you don't think about it.
I don't think about anything. I'm just thinking about the tattoo and what I need to do to get that to be as nice as possible.
Yeah, and once you become an experienced tattooer, you're not having to think about, oh, I got to stretch the skin here, I got to make this line this way.
So
all the technical things all fade into the background, and you're only focused on the artistic part of it, which allows you to elevate the art to a much higher level like that.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, some of the shit that's being done these days is just, we never thought of that. You know, I mean, there's some really good fucking artists out there, man.
Well, everything is based on the people that came before them. So the things that we're doing.
Don't tell them that. You know what I mean? Because they think they invented this shit. You know?
Well, they're sure they invented it.
Yeah,
you know? They
of
go,
course.
nobody ever did this before, but. Well, yeah, but you wouldn't even be doing it if somebody in the generation before you hadn't developed all of the techniques and the equipment and the pigments and everything that you're using now. It came from somewhere. You didn't just
I mean, like
invent
the pigments, the needles, like machines, everything. I mean, no one has to think about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
when we were
all
doing
secondary.
it, you had to make your own needles, you had to mix your own pigment, you had to paint your own flash. I mean, and you had to clean your own shop and take out the garbage, and I mean, nobody does any of that stuff anymore.
No, they just hire someone.
Exactly.
And that's it, and that's out of the equation. I like nurturing a shop. I like nurturing a tattoo business, you know, and taking it from nothing. Like you see that shell before you even go in there, and then like every once in a while I'll just stop and just put everything down and look in front of, you know, if I'm coming out of the shop and just look, man, you know, like I built this place.
I made it from nothing.
You know, this was nothing, and you don't get that without other people too. You know what I mean? Like good tattooers that come in there, you know, family. They end up being your family. You know, I mean, I'm closer to anybody in the world than I am in people in tattooing. You know,
right.
I got a lot of brothers and sisters, and
that's one of the awesome things about being here at this convention this weekend, because it's been a long time since there's really been this kind of a convention where most of the people that you see, you are not only do you know them, but they're really good friends. They're close. They're like family and stuff. And
I mean, I don't think I've really had to shake hands with anyone. Everybody's like big hug.
Yeah.
You know.
Hugs for everybody.
So exactly, and it's always good to see everyone. Yeah, you're one of those guys. Every time I talk to you, man, I just enjoy sitting down and talking to you, and I get jazzed because it's like you're one of those guys. Before I even knew you, I was like, man, this fucking guy's doing cool shit, you know. And I was making money off of your flash, and you know, like your flash got bootlegged so fucking much, you know. And then I started doing flash, and I started seeing it getting bootlegged. I was like, all right, now I know how it feels.
Yeah, man, you know, it used to tear me up so bad. I would get phone calls from literally all over the world. Somebody would say, hey man, somebody came in the shop today, and they had copies of all your flash with your name whited out on it, and they were selling it, you know, for whatever. And it would just it'd make you physically sick, and I'd have trouble sleeping, and I'd be
because no one was fucking painting their own shit then.
Right.
No one was doing any of their own flash. You know, people were buying like the Crow stuff or your stuff or, you know, whatever was out there they were buying.
It was a big deal for me to have to learn how to let go of that and not take it so personal and actually really just not care about it anymore. And I actually got to the point where I told myself, listen, the only way that you're going to be able to live a normal, healthy life, that you're not all stressed out about these people stealing from you and stuff, you might as well just quit making flash because...
Yeah, well that or just, you know, look, I had to let go of like the resentments, you know, for a lot of this shit. I talk a lot of horse shit, but for the most part, I'm pretty fucking mellow about shit, you know.
Yeah, I don't care about any of that stuff
You know,
anymore.
it doesn't really bother me anymore, you know. I like breaking balls sometimes, you know. That's just how it is.
Well, that was a big lesson in life for me to learn, you know, was to not worry about things that you have no control over. I mean, it took me most of my life to realize that you can't worry about that shit. If you worrying about it is not going to make it any better. It's not going to solve any problem. It's not going to.
It's just negativity.
Yeah.
It's just focus on. They said, what is it? A resentment is like pissing your pants. Everybody sees it, and you're the only one that feels it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's what it is. You'd be all fucking pissed off, and everybody's like, "What's he all fucking pissed off about?"
Yeah, there's no point in pissed off.
Right.
I want to be happy. I want to be a happy person. I want the people around me to be happy. I want to be able to not be complaining about shit and being a downer. And I don't want. I mean, I have people in my life that all they do is complain, and sometimes I don't even want to talk to them because it's just
It's exhausting.
Yeah, their depression and stuff will rub off on you and make you an unhappy person.
Most definitely, man. You know, like, and when you're in tattooing, you have way more happy days than shitty days. You know what I mean? Like, whenever I felt shitty, I would just go to the shop. And I could just sit there and draw, even just watch TV, but just having that space around me, like, oh, you feel like, you know, you're in the womb again. You know, you just, that's a comfortable place for me, and always has been, and I'm sure it always will be, you know. And then there's guys like you that feel the same way. That's the people I like to, you know, to talk to. Like when I'm doing these interviews and stuff, it's like, I don't ever remember seeing anyone sitting down with you talking to you about your story, you know. And people have gotten it one-on-one, but I'm really excited for people to see and hear your story. And they can put a voice to the name, you know, and they can put a face to the name as well.
Yeah, so it's awesome that you're doing this. I have had some friends in the tattoo business that I thought, man, I would so love to take a video camera and just sit down with some of these people that I love and respect. And
that's exactly why I do this.
And get, you know, the background story that nobody ever hears about them, because some of these people are so much more interesting than just what you see on face value.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, you know, people they see you on the internet or whatever, you're only giving them what you want them to see.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's good to see, you know, when you go to conventions like this, or if I'm doing an interview, people get to really know the real person, what they're about, you know.
Yeah.
And it's usually a hell of a lot more interesting than pictures on Instagram.
Yeah,
So
Instagram is just what you want, the image that you want people to see.
It's a lie.
Like
it's a liar's club, man.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Liar's club. Man.
So, but
social media.
Exactly. Where do you think you see tattooing in your future? Because you still build machine. You make a fucking great machine, dude.
Thanks.
You know, one of your machines should be in everybody's collections. You know what I mean? That's that ace in the hole right there. I'm sure you would. You know, but where do you see yourself with this in the future? You know, you're going to retire. You're going to, you know, crap out of it, or you always have your hand in it.
Well, I'd like to be. For me, a retirement thing would be that I just do what I want to do without having to do anything. And totally honestly, that's pretty much what I do right now. I spend a lot of time working in my machine shop. I enjoy being there. I learn new things every day. I'm trying to make you know, new improvements and stuff to machines and stuff like that. And it's a mentally challenging thing. You know, because it's kind of technical, using machinery and all of that. So I enjoy that. I love tattooing. I don't tattoo every day like I used to. I mean, for years I did this 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Listen, you put your work in, dude. You know what I mean? You don't know anything to anybody. Fuck 'em.
I still love tattooing though,
Sure.
and it's funny because so many people say, "Oh, I didn't think you even tattooed anymore." It's like, of course I'm a tattooer. A tattooer can't stop tattooing.
No.
I mean, you do it because you love it, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I also do other things. I enjoy spending time in Key West and taking the boat and going fishing or going
Sure.
scuba diving or something like that. And
But you're like a warm weather outdoors guy. You know what I mean?
yeah, I'm totally into the warm weather. After living in Calgary for 5 years, I don't care if I.
I mean,
ever
it gets
see
cold in
weather.
Philly, but it ain't like fucking Canada, dude. You know, it's
Canada.
like minus fucking 22, 23.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
fuck that, dude. You're a better man than me. But so I mean, you know, it seems like, you know, it's come full circle. You know, you spent those early years, you know, building machines with your brother, and you know, and they were just, you know, it was just for necessity. You know what I mean?
Well, it was kind of that was a thing. My brother was a genius. I mean, I don't know how many people. I mean, Philip Liu started tattooing when he was like 12 or something like that. He was
Yeah.
from a tattoo family. Well, we weren't. My parents didn't tattoo, so us getting into tattooing was like a weird anomaly thing. You know, we
Yeah,
didn't
for
have a lot
sure.
of tattoo influences or anything like that. But my brother, when he was just a little kid, invented things on tattoo machines that had never been done before. And
Wow, it's a trip, man.
you know, he was the driving force behind me getting into it. And a lot of the things that I learned about tattoo machines, I learned before I ever even actually started tattooing, because he made me build tattoo machines before I was really allowed to tattoo, you know. And
I mean, to have that kind of foresight at like 15 or 16 is phenomenal. That is
It's crazy.
genius.
It's crazy,
You know what I mean?
you know?
Yeah, that is. That is
opening
genius.
your own tattoo shop when you're 15 years old.
God bless him, dude.
Yeah, it's
God bless
crazy.
him, right? Ken, I appreciate you sitting down and talking with me, man. It's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah,
and
it's
thank
been
you
really
very much.
fun.
Love you, buddy.
Thanks,
and
man.
and hopefully we'll get a part 2 of you at some point in the future.
Yeah,
okay?
maybe.
Thanks,
Cool.
brother.